Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Temple Formula Racing podcast with your co-hosts Ashley, Chris, and Lo.
Hi guys, this week we'll be covering a team update.
And then following that, we will have an interview with our FSAE lead M.E. Houston, then questions and answers for the hashtag TFR pod, then our final interview with our past president, Hunter Hayes.
Woo! But first, we're going to go to Lil with her little team update and her little report.
Okay guys, so this week, pretty exciting stuff. Our budget we've had money coming in, money from last year, but it's finally been approved, which is cool with COVID. Yay! That's really cool. Also, I think what's also really exciting is composites are going to start, getting pounded out soon.
Wait, what are composites? What does that mean?
A composite?
Yeah, what does that mean? Like, what is composites on our team?
So like this, well, they're probably not going to do the side pods, but like the ergonomics stuff. So like the foot thing, the TFR plate, like, like all the like carbon fiber components on our car. I guess we just call them composites. Wait, Chris, were you actually asking me that? Or for the podcast?
Well, it was kind of both. I mean, like, yeah, I knew what composites. I know what composites are, but I wanted to do it for the podcast and myself.
I was like, should I actually explain it? Also, I think Powertrain is working on getting an engine, and maybe they've already picked it out, and yeah, that's really exciting. Other than that, Chris and Ashley, how's your week going?
Pretty good. We're doing a lot for like machining. We're doing a lot of planning for ergo and all the new parts that we have to do with the new chassis design, and it's going really good. Everyone's smooth sailing right now, so very exciting.
That's good.
Nice. Mm-hmm. And then I've been up to other stuff besides Temple Formula Racing, but this podcast is kind of bringing me back to it, so that's nice.
You did post on the Instagram.
That's correct, I did. And what was it? A picture of?
It was a stock image, I think.
Yeah.
I think it was of the intake.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I've been up to. Lil, what have you been working on with the team?
Wheel assembly is coming along, so that's exciting. So.
Okay.
We're finishing up designs.
I totally forgot. We had done our chemical inventory this past week. All done. All of our chemicals are registered in the school building, and we are safe and up to codes.
The yellow cabinet is secure.
Is secure.
I also wanted to mention Sybil sent out an email, I think like a reminder email for if you haven't done shop training, to do shop training. Very important, especially for the school if you want to work in the shop this year. So if you
do
wanna,
that,
kind of important.
If you wanna, feel free to do that too.
Joining us now is our FBA System Lead M.E. Houston. M.E., thanks for being on the podcast with us. Could you tell us?
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Could you tell us your major and what you do on the team?
So I'm a mechanical engineering student here at Temple, and I'm the head of FBA, which stands for Frame, Body, and Aero. Our car currently doesn't have a lot of aero devices, but my job mainly consists of the frame, building the chassis, designing around other systems, and then the body components, which are all carbon fiber that we make in-house and make all the molds at Temple and on site. So the frame is the metal tubes that support the driver. It's basically the biggest part of the car, right? You have suspension. The frame kind of connects each system in my mind. So it revolves around ergo because it's where the driver is sitting and it's holding everything ergo does inside, and it's holding the engine in the back with the disc mount, but it's also connecting suspension to everything else. It's like the veins of the, car in terms of systems where you got a lot of important organs. The frame is the blood flow, right? It's connecting everything. And so it really is an interesting system that requires us to both meet a lot of really high standards. I think the frame in terms of the FSAE competition has the most strict rules, and that's because it's primarily based on safety. But then it's how do you get creative around it, and upper members and different height requirements and distances and welding different points make you really push you to be the most creative you can be within those limitations. So that's frame. And then aero is anything with aerodynamic devices. So that can range from a diffuser to an aero package, which is something I personally have a goal of getting on the car by the time I graduate. Even though I joined as a freshman, I think it's definitely something we've been working on, but our car is so big that it, takes a lot of weight, so it'd have to be really efficient. And so that's its own justification that we've made to judges for the past couple of years. And then body is all the body panels. And we actually wrap our car in Dacron, which is a material that many years ago, someone on the team figured out how to use, and we got points for it because it was a really creative way to use a lightweight material. So it's basically the body is anything that covers the frame and protects the driver. So you got the under tray and the side pods, which are my baby, and the nose cone, which the school takes a lot of pride in because it's, the pretty car looking part of the car. And and then from that, really, you have composites, which does a lot for ergo, and I do all the composites on the team right now. But we do all the carbon fiber layups in our shop, and that I always describe to new people in the most immature way, which is industrial arts and crafts. It's a lot of paper mache type process and mold making and things like that I actually feel like I learned in high school in terms of, making female and male molds and plugs and things like that.
Is that one of the reasons why you chose to be on FBA as a system, or out of all the other systems?
I don't think I chose FBA. I think I got suckered into it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was definitely the most interesting part of the team because I am not a car person. I grew up in a city. I took the metro. I still have friends who don't have their driver's license. So it's funny to me that I do so much revolving around automotive stuff now. And it's fascinating to me now, of course, but I didn't get into TFR because of it. I got into TFR because I had this crazy friend as a freshman who wanted me to join, and I'm looking at her on Zoom right now. And I walked in and they were doing a layup and I was like, oh, this is cool. And it just seemed approachable. And then the first weekend I helped, they were making fiberglass molds for the side pods, and we use the trash room at our school. We call it the Advanced Composites Lab. They got thrown away when they were curing overnight, my first weekend helping out. And so I was like, oh, I can help. And so I started making these side pod molds in January when it was like we got to get this together kind of thing because it threw off their timeline for the entire year in terms of production. So then I just came into the shop and would sand a foam plaster mold. And I got really close with the girl who was doing that, but it wasn't even a thing of, I don't know how to describe it. I just somehow felt comfortable in the shop.
It's
and
like
then from there grew.
Just sanding for hours and hours and
At
hours.
first, I'd say at first, I've done a bit and maybe meditative at first, but after a bit, it kind of gets bored.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it definitely takes a specific type of person. And I think it's it's also a weird thing where most things are really binary in the shop. It's like, it's either working, so you're good, or it's not, right? Like it's fixed or it's not fixed. But making molds and bringing them up to really high grit count, so up to 2,000, up to 4,000, the difference between those two, most people don't feel it and they see a little divot, or you don't see a divot, but I might feel a pinhole and I'm like, oh, we need to patch that. And I have people on my team, thankfully, that feed into that and they're like, I see it too, and we do that. But most people are a little bit like, does it matter? Especially since it's so unrewarding, right? Like if you're making spacers up in the shop, you at the end of the day can see the pile of materials that you've transformed from one thing to the other. But mold making specifically, you don't see what you're doing until basically you're done and you can't go back, right? So it's making the surfaces, putting on the layers, painting it, then doing the fiberglass, and then you remove that mold at the end and you see where you're at, versus you don't. So the choices you made 2 months before you're seeing in your layup. And that's something that takes someone who really is okay with not being satisfied with a day of work on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So if you weren't in FBA, what system do you think you would choose?
Well, this year specifically, I feel like I've learned a lot about suspension. And so I think suspension is definitely fascinating, and I have a grasp on it that makes me feel very smart. Like, really, sincerely, I've learned enough about each system, I feel like, that you get different things out of it. I think powertrain is the most satisfying, like clicking into place, something getting done feeling. I think suspension is the most rewarding, similar to FBA, where you don't see it until you see it, and when it clicks, you feel smart, which is constantly a thing I'm craving, because I never feel smart in the shop, right? There's always a fire to put out. So I think suspension, I mean, electrical seems like they're having a great time. Like they're their own little island, which sometimes I think FBA feels like we are when it comes to composites and things like that. But I like the trust and like chillness of electrical and like working with senior design teams and things like that. That's like my retirement dream in terms of this
It's
team.
just becoming an electrical engineer.
Oh my god.
Don't say that you don't need to be an engineer specifically to be on the team. I mean, I'd work for Tim. It'd be great. Actually, no, I'm changing my thing. I would like to run the social media with Chris and learn how to take good photos. That's really what I want to do.
It's true.
Come up with good captions.
Oh, captions.
Timelines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Captions
How
are
about the
difficult.
caption?
Do we have a Twitter? I forget.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Actually.
Yeah.
Not business
I'm sorry.
specifically, because I worked a lot with Hunter when I was a freshman, before he was even El Presidente, to like help him put PowerPoints together. And he did so much work with sponsors that it was, I knew how to help him, and it's a skill I felt semi-comfortable in being like his like assistant and helping him organize things. But it didn't actually, like, making a PowerPoint look pretty, but like talking to sponsors, like that's something I wouldn't want to do. But like cost report is kind of interesting. I want to help with social media specifically. That's a skill that would translate.
All right. I mean, I'll
That
pencil you in.
That was a place for you to like plug our socials, by the way.
I mean,
it wasn't
that's
me, like,
a
At
brilliant
Temple
team. I think that's a brilliant team to aspire to work for. And I like, you're hired.
They really have
Come
a
on.
high standard of quality.
Yeah, come on. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Temple Formula Racing, and on Twitter at TU Formula Racing. Also, like, check us out on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Link us.
But if you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, you probably already know about the YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever other podcast platform you're listening on. So thank you for that.
Chris, will you help me with my LinkedIn account? Like on a
Of
personal
course.
level? That would be really,
Of course.
I need these internships.
Yeah, I got to update
Oh, I have a question. You might have to edit this up. Do you always connect with, like, people connect with me, but I don't know them? Do you still connect with them?
It can be up to you.
Even
Yeah.
if they have mutual connections with me?
Mutual connections, I feel, it's greater than like just a random person.
mhm.
Okay.
But,
Like,
like,
they go to Temple.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, then you accept it.
Anyway,
Good
I mean,
information.
Well, we're roommates, but I don't think we're connected on LinkedIn, and that's clear.
We are connected, Emmy. Of course, I'm connected to the FBA lead.
of course.
Wink. Okay. Chris.
Emmy, I have a question here. It's what have you worked on the car? But you've already kind of talked about that. What's been your most successful or favorite thing that you've worked on the car? Could I add, like, when you're talking about the side pods and you were talking about how high level grit you got last year, when I like felt the smoothness of the mold, it was probably the smoothest thing I've ever felt. I just
That's a
You gotta give
compliment.
that credit to Josh and Emma, who are my teammates on FBA. Which, for the record, the one thing I take the most pride in, like, I would say the side pods were my child last year, because I worked on the foam mold my first semester. Then I came in as like a freshman, sophomore, and basically was in charge of all of the composites. So I was the composite lead before I was head of FBA completely. And with that, I designed the side pods. I learned Star CCM to simulate and validate them. I chose the design. I made fiberglass molds as test runs, and then made fiberglass for my first time to make those molds. And then we actually had a plan to get them done by my birthday, which was March 20th. And of course, there was this thing that like interfered. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it was
it around
global
March
pandemic.
12th-ish?
Yeah, something like that.
Mhm.
Where we had actually spent spring break the week before the world shut down at school, and so
The
like that's
FBA
the most,
grind is like no other.
I mean, yeah,
Big
because
grind.
it's little by little, and then when you have a layup or you have something that needs to get done, it's multiple days in a row of just a layer of paint waiting 3 hours, a layer of gel coat waiting 3 hours, resin, cleaning brushes takes hours afterwards. And that's the crazy thing of there is no we did it, we're done. It's we did it, we're done. We still need to clean all of this stuff that really you need to be able to reuse. And it's very draining and rewarding because I'm a masochist. So as the side pods are the thing I'm most proud of, but really the thing that I learned last year that I'm truly the most proud of is just the way my system specifically works and communicates. We're a pretty small team compared to like Powertrain, which gets all the flashy, like new people interested in it. But my team is no one puts in more work within our system, right? We all got each other covered, and it's a thing of I've really pushed myself to learn things that I wasn't comfortable with, but I also feel really proud of the way I pushed other people on my team to step up and take responsibility, and the way that Josh is able to be someone that I think you guys should interview, and the way Emma is able to knock out layouts on her own is something that I think is the most satisfying thing. And being able to teach what I know to other people, because I think when I entered my second year, I was the only person with the knowledge on the team, and that really made me uncomfortable because like I don't have the greatest memory, and there was nothing written down for the work I've done in teaching everyone who will listen about what we do as a way to both understand our timelines and work with us when we're designing things for other systems, in addition to just getting more people interested in it, because I think it's just fascinating and it's really something I'm passionate about.
Yeah. And then with that, how has the car, or specifically, I would say the frame and composites, changed from last year to this year? Because that's also a big topic.
The frame's changing a lot because of suspension goals this year. And so moving to 10-inch wheels definitely changes our pickup points and things like that. And we're really trying to, the FSAE system specifically, I think is the most validated system in terms of just work before it's produced, both because of the rules and because of our goals we set for ourselves. So I mentioned Star CCM before as like a simulation that I use for side pods. But I think that, so when we're making changes to the frame and to carbon fiber pieces, it's really with strategy and longevity, because we want to keep all the things we have validated in place as much as possible as a way to make incremental change that is guaranteed to be better, instead of making 5 changes and not knowing which one actually is either causing the problem or giving us some benefit, right? And so we really want to make choices that we can go to judges and say, we made this very intentional choice because of X, Y, and Z.
So, Emmy, why did you want to go into engineering?
When I was in high school, I took an engineering class because I was homesick for a year, and I decided I wanted to take an online class that was actually like engaging with people. And we did like different projects each week, and it made me realize how many things engineering covers, because my mom is actually an engineer and she's a patent examiner, and I always viewed her job as and I respect her so much, but she is a highly qualified, well-compensated paper grader. And I didn't think engineering was that fun because of it, which is kind of funny. But I took this class, and my teacher was so great, and I got to be really collaborative during a time where I was taking online classes and I wasn't really able to work with people or work on teams. And it made me realize it combines the things I love, which is like being creative and finding solutions, but also it was challenging academically, which is something I enjoy. So math and science and the things that I've always been more comfortable with than, writing a paper or anything like that.
So with that, why did you choose to join TFR?
This girl, Ashley, who I can't remember.
Oh my gosh, that girl again.
Who she was.
Who is she?
I don't know. I just like solving problems. So mechanical, I switched. It was really easy. It's not like I took any civil classes at that time. And for the record, it was Tony, who is someone you should also interview, who used to be on the team and is an alumni and is the true composites FBA master. His now wife, she went to comp with us because he drove the trailer, and she was in civil, and she was just like, you want to be in mechanical. And that's why I switched, separate from the fact that the other blonde over there is, was like, mechanical's so much better. But
the blonde being Ashley.
Sorry.
Clarify.
I forgot.
For the people listening.
And And yeah, so another thing that happened at camp was I was sanding and staying late to do layups because I thought it was interesting. And I really referred to it as industrial arts and crafts the whole time when I would explain it to my mom or anything like that. And so we were in the shop at like 3 a.m. on a Thursday because that's what you do when it's crunch time / like, April of school year where you have exams and things. Like, I don't know why I was doing it, but they were talking, our president, Steve, basically said, someone asked him about comp and was like, so who's going, what's going on, whatever. And he's like, well, I don't really know because there are people like at the beginning of last semester who were really like a part of the team in terms of design, but they're never around anymore versus these two. And he pointed to me and my friend Zach. And I was just like, I looked up because I had these giant Beats headphones on that I would just put on, play a video on my phone or listen to a podcast and just stand for that amount of time, basically every day. That was my routine. And I looked up and I'm like, are you talking about me? And he turned to me, he's like, you're here at 3 a.m. on a Thursday. Yeah, you might have done enough work to deserve to go to Michigan. And it didn't even dawn on me until that moment, and really until way after that moment, that it was a thing of, oh, I was really an important part of this team. I really am around and I really did absorb a lot of knowledge, which is just my own probably self-consciousness. But I mean, that really was my thought process. And then when I got to Michigan and we were at comp, where for the record, FSAE is like the one system that is not panicking at comp, because if you don't have your stuff together by the time you're out there, you can't really change anything. There is no emergency carbon fiber layup. There is no welding the chassis because there's approval processes mid-season that, like the SES report, that are required and guarantee safety and everything like that. So while I was at comp, I was hanging out with Jim and John, who are like the team mentors. They work in the machine shop upstairs, and they turned to me while we were watching autocross, and they're like, so you're the new Julia now, the girl who had done all the carbon fiber. And I laughed and I said, no, I'm not. Like, who wants to be Julia? She's, there's so much stress. She's so like, I was just doing it to help out a friend because in my mind, Julia's a friend. Like, it's fine. I was like, I don't want to be Julia. Like, that seems like a lot of work. And literally I turned to Julia. I was like, hey, Jim and John said this. And she looked at me like dumbfounded. And she was like, of course you're me now. And I was like, it didn't dawn on me until school was over in May at Michigan that I was like, oh boy. So I spent like the summer mentally preparing and working and, going through things and talking with Hunter about our plans, and then basically hit the ground running last year, running composites, and then realizing, oh wait, Chow's graduating, and learned my lesson from Julia saying, you're me now, like in May, to say to Chow, I want to be head of FBA next year, or I think that's just the next logical step. I have the most experience because our team was rather small and a lot of new people. But I said, I spent the year really training for the role that I have now, instead of just getting it thrown upon me.
And do you remember your first, because you mentioned sanding, was that your first project in TFR? Like just someone told you to sand?
Yeah, that, and I remember helping Jonah with some suspension stuff. They were making jigs. And then my first weekend, I do remember they were using the router upstairs and they were using it for jigs, but then the side pods went missing. So we were routing out foam for the side pod inverted mold on the router upstairs in the shop.
And that's a fun process to just sit there and...
Yeah, and it sounds super impressive. And then they're like, oh, it's just, and they said a bunch of words. And I'm like, I don't know what this is. I had never used SolidWorks in high school. Like, I didn't know anything. And, you're just constantly learning. Like the following year, me and Chow were up there one weekend routing out foam for molds or whatever. And we put the spindle at too high of a speed and it like melted through the foam. And you're just like, oh, the person who a year ago I thought, oh my God, she knows everything about this space is screwing up things that a year ago Chow wouldn't have even, like, it was so funny how it's, even things that you know how to do, you still screw up. Like, it's just like, it's a constantly humbling experience, right? Like, whenever you're too confident, you're about to get something.
Especially in front of other people, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, I'm going to talk about this and then realize, like, I was using the wrong word for gel coat or resin or something.
Mm-hmm. So, getting away from TFR towards the end of this podcast interview, what else do you enjoy doing with your time besides sanding and engineering?
Okay. For the record, I just want the podcast to know I live with Will and Ashley, and
no, we don't. We don't live together. I don't know
what she's talking about.
I don't know her.
But I'm really here for a podcast where you're both in the same room. I'm actually home right now because I had some circumstances where I'm back in DC. But you would see normally in my Zoom background, I really like to draw. I think it's a really useful, like doing something activity without it being physical labor, similar to all the engineering things I do. So I like drawing a lot, and I really like to cook. So those are two things that sound nothing like what I do in TFR, but also measuring out like ratios and things like that for layups are very similar to the way I bake, where it's like very scientific until 3 hours in and you're just like, oh, we need a dash of this. Like it just needs to get done, right? Sometimes you forget to grease the pan. That's what PVA is like in the shop. Like these are metaphors that I've really thought about. So like that's kind of who I am. I'm just a universally competitive person. We play a lot of games. Rummy Cube is great. Card games are great with my family. I don't know. What do I do? You guys know more than me.
Well, you could talk about SWE. You're doing so much.
Yeah, what's SWE?
Oh, yeah. So I'm membership chair this year, which is really weird because it's during a pandemic. And sadly, I was trying to get this like a peer mentorship program off the ground and forcing a lot of my friends to volunteer to be a mentor. But sadly, because it's virtual, I think girls don't know what it is and it's hard that a lot of new people didn't sign up. And we only had one girl want to be a mentee. But SWE is the Society of Women Engineers. It's a club here at Temple. I think separate from TFR, they're the most embracing group that I've met within the engineering building. They are so nice, and I constantly would introduce myself even like middle of last year after I went to the SWE conference with them in California the previous semester and be like, hi, I'm Emmy, and people like Elizabeth would be like, I know, like we've had many conversations, how's your sister doing? And I'd be like, oh my God. So it's just a great group to be a part of. Right now I'm doing this virtual conference in pursuit of an internship. And so that's been a fun experience. And so this is the only reason why I'm doing okay in this interview right now is because I've been talking about myself for the last 2 weeks with random strangers, and at least you guys aren't random strangers.
I don't know you.
We've never met before.
Well, speaking of the fact that we're on Zoom, we're in a pandemic. How has
Thank you, Will.
COVID?
Thank you, Will. Captain Obvious.
For everyone listening, also for people in the future, this is 2020.
Yeah.
How has COVID impacted your plans? TFR plans, you can talk about personal plans, you can talk about whatever you want. Like,
what hasn't it impacted? Like, I mean, it's just definitely been a challenge, and I feel like all the work that I had done the previous year to prepare me to be the system lead I wanted to be was both really valuable to me as a person and as an engineer, but is really not helpful for this year based on the limitations. So pushing for Aero like has changed in priorities just in a manufacturing respect. I mean, COVID's changed everything. And when this first started, I remember kind of weirdly, for as anxiety based as I am as like a person on the team, I'm always like saying, worst case scenario, are we going to make it? Like I'm a very worst case scenario kind of planner. When this hit, I remember talking to Elliot and Hunter, and just being like, we got this. And me and Sybil specifically were like more chill than anyone else in terms of like what was happening. And I'm like, it's fine. Like, we'll definitely have comp, but if we don't have comp, we can build your own comp. There's just enough schools in Pennsylvania that we could all meet up and race. Like, I had plans. Like, I was calm. We did the side pod layup at Emma's house in the middle of nowhere, PA, during 4th of July weekend, because that was the first weekend we could both interact, and we limited our contacts, and like I stayed at her house and we got it done. So I think it's really shown me just the like strength of my system specifically to finish a task, even when what's the point? Like, that car wasn't going to be what it is. So it's just been a challenge on all levels. I mean, I specifically was sick in high school, so I did a year of online school, and when school went online, I was weirdly the optimist because I was like, this is going to suck for everyone, but unlike what happened to me in high school, at least everyone's stuck in their house with online school, and so you can FaceTime. Like, no one has an excuse not to pick up the phone kind of thing, versus, you know, for me in high school, the experience was I was stuck at home, being sick, taking online classes, but other people were still out buying dresses for prom and still getting to go to some meets and things like that. So, you know, the whole, like, there's a sense of unity in it. So it's not like we're experiencing a limitation that other teams, other schools, other people around the world aren't experiencing. I just listen to a lot of podcasts. Like, that's my music. I listen to everything.
What's your favorite podcast besides Temple from
Besides
the
this,
West? Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell's podcast is amazing. I can't remember what it's called at this moment. I also like Armchair Experts because Monica's the best in that. I listen to a lot of things, a lot of like comedy ones, a lot of informative ones. I'm a friend of the pod, which is called, Crooked Media, because they're great. Just all the ones where you guys are really competitive with. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're my favorite car-based podcast.
Thank you, Emmy.
Except for Jack Shepard does love his car too, and so does Malcolm Gladwell. He's a car bro.
The F1 Beyond the Grid podcast is my favorite podcast. But anyway.
What about our podcast, Chris?
Oh, close second.
Okay, so how can we get Chris to leave the meeting?
I think I'm the host.
Okay.
Anyway, Emmy, our last question for you today is, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to getting to work. Like, there's been a lot of additional planning this year, and I think my system has always been good about that. But I'm looking forward to getting to work and hitting the roadblocks that you can't plan for. I think that's what FSAE is. I talk about it in job interviews. I talk about it. One of my bosses this summer at Caterpillar, he did FSAE and still helps out his team at Purdue. And I think it's interesting because it's just a universal thing. Like, it's not, even if you're the best, well-funded, most organized team, at some point, hitting the fan, like, there's going to be something that you forgot to order, and so you're hitting pause on that, so you need to rechange. There's something about the design that isn't right. Now, sure, you should buffer in time for that, and time will be a crunch this year, but I enjoy finding the weird solutions. I enjoy finishing problems, and so that's really what I'm looking forward to. It's, seeing the car come together, seeing last year's car come together. There's like a lot of things that are, almost there, but you just gotta like tie the bow on it. And so getting to see the bow on it again will be very satisfying, because the last time you had that feeling is when I got to go to Michigan in May of 2019. I went to the SWE conference last year in California and talked to companies that like I didn't even like comprehend. I'm like, oh right, every major company I've ever thought was cool needs engineers. And it was interesting to talk to them because they ask you about your school experience. And the projects that I work on for intro or, physics or right, like at that point in time in the beginning of my like school-based classes, or even just we have a class where it's like CAD-based drawings, they're not that challenging. They're for a grade. They're very structured, right? And it's really great to have experience working on problems where sometimes there isn't an answer. Sometimes there's 50 answers and you just have to choose one and be able to back it up. And having that experience really, when you're in college, either comes from an internship where you're being trusted with it, but the first place I know I got exposed to it and had the opportunity to really make choices was in TFR. And that's why I'm able to talk about my experience making hard choices and working with teammates and having difficulties with both communication or budget or just time. So yeah, I'm very grateful for the exposure I had when I was a freshman.
And with that time, we are done with this interview. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Emmy.
Thank you, Emmy, for joining the podcast.
I'm excited to see
I didn't get as many laughs as Hunter did. I'm nervous.
What?
I heard you guys talking to Hunter and you guys were laughing.
Oh, that was after the podcast.
Yeah, Hunter's just crazy.
Hunter's wild.
We'll hear about that more later in this episode, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned, guys.
Anyway, Emmy, thank you for joining us. And we, like you said, the bow on top of the car. I think we should get one of those big bows that they have in like those Christmas commercials for. Like,
those are like $500.
We can make one. It'll be our
I'm looking it up. It's insane.
We'll put it in the budget.
We can make one. Anyway, thank you,
sell
Emmy,
the
so
carbon
much.
fiber.
Going there.
Thanks, Emmy, for coming.
Of course, bring a friend wherever you go, and I'm sure it'll lead to great things in your life. So we're moving on to this TFR pod segment now, and we're going to take up this whole segment to talk about the process from the beginning stages of designing a car all the way to competition in May. So if you guys, how does it all start, really?
Well, different teams have different schedule layouts. Some people start immediately, or start designing even before competition for the next car so that they can talk at comp about what their plans are for the next year. We don't do that. We do testing over the summer most of the time because we've had our car, something might have gone wrong at comp, or we didn't like how something ran at comp, so then we test and try to understand why it went a certain way, and then we go straight into designing after we have done all of our testing, which has made this year really hard because we haven't gotten all that testing over the summer. So we're trying to redesign and improve our car without having a lot of testing data right up front.
So it's like design improvement, like design, either redesigns, improvement of designs, or we're keeping it the same. And then it goes into manufacturing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or validation and then manufacturing.
Yes.
How long
even
does...
sometimes, if we're not changing a part, then we'll, start building it or trying to make it as soon as possible so that we don't have to worry about it later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of like the side pods. We have fiberglass molds for them because we know we're going to keep them. I think we're going to keep them this year. So, we sometimes have long-term plans.
Mm-hmm.
But then we go into manufacturing it, and then I would say we get ready for presenting it. Well, then we test it again. We build the car, and then we get ready for presentation. So,
we practice driving for the driving events. If there are driving events, we'll see how that goes.
Well, yeah, we'll see.
Is this
fingers
cohesive?
Crossed? Yeah. Well, it works. When does the design process end and the manufacturing process begin?
There's no cutoff. We could keep, if a design for a piece didn't work out or it's not working the way we want it to, we might have to redesign it again really quick and then manufacture it again really quick. And then
maybe
test
at comp.
it again. Yeah.
Ashley.
What?
Maybe at comp.
Yeah, maybe we might make a whole part at comp and then
What's
put it
the
on
story
the car.
there, Ashley? What's the story there?
There's so many stories. So at comp, my first year I was on the team. We were trying to pass. There were so many things. Anyway, comp was a hot mess, but in a good way. It was I learned a lot. The muffler was trying to pass sound, and we failed. So we had to, and what that means is our car was too loud and too many decibels over the limit. So we had to take the muffler off, figure out what we could change about it. We actually had we made on the spot 3 new mufflers.
Oh my gosh.
All at once. Yeah, fixing the old one, putting on a new one that we had, a backup muffler, and then making a whole new one at comp with the people that were there. They have welders at the competition and other material sponsors so that you have materials at comp, but it's really hard to put it all together. And so I spent 3 hours taking the intake and getting all of the packing out of it because we were oh, it's too tight. The packing inside of the muffler was too tight, so the sound wasn't getting absorbed. It was just bouncing off the packing, which was not good. Very bad. So after that whole whirlwind of hours of figuring out the muffler thing, wasting our time and not using it wisely, we passed sound. And then we went straight to acceleration. And then, the diff mount might have fallen off.
Fallen off.
Yeah, might have,
Okay, so say everything goes well. And everything's designed appropriately and we're ready for comp. When is the finalization of manufacturing and assembly of the vehicle?
So what happens after the car is done being built here in Philadelphia, what we do is we take all of the parts that cannot be damaged in transit. We take off the intake, we take off the steering wheel, we take off a bunch of important pieces of the car, and then pack them up really nicely and put them in the trailer. Sorry, excuse me. We put them in the trailer, pack up everything. We gather all the tools, a grill, like everything. If we go to competition,
all the tools, a grill,
and a grill. Grill's very important for food. And then we like get doubles of everything. Like you cannot be too prepared for comp because you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know how your car is going to react to the new weather changes. There's less pressure up in Michigan, so the altitude's different, so your car runs different, so you have to tune it there as well as here. And then we drive it like for however many hours. I've totally forgotten because I blocked it out of my brain.
I would say it's probably plus 12 hours.
Yeah, it's a long drive. It's a very
to Chicago, it's 12 hours, so I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe 8.
Yeah,
Michigan.
It's so long.
10.
And no, but you stop at like gas stations with your team. It's really fun.
Moving on a bit from the overall schedule of the team, we'll dive into what competition is like next podcast. But what can new team members do right now to get involved?
I would say sign up for Slack, sign up for SolidWorks, try to download as many things off the drive, and learn about them, go to meetings, ask questions, ask so many questions. Questions are very important. Annoy us, please, so you learn and so that we learn how to answer questions, because what you ask might be a question that we need to know the answer for competition. So
yeah, and I would say also if you know who the lead is, like just send them a Slack DM. They'd be happy to like give you information when the meetings are, or whatever. Everyone's super nice.
Joining us now is a former Temple Formula Racing project manager, Hunter Hayes, not the country singer, but Hunter, welcome to the podcast. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? When did you graduate and what you've been up to?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be on this, and I'm glad, Chris, for starting this up. You really stepped into your role. But I graduated last year in 2020, and so it's been a long couple months since graduation, but things are moving smoothly now. I'm actually proud to announce that I actually did just get an offer at a company called Bentley Systems. I haven't gotten the formal letter just yet, but they did give me a verbal offer, and so I will be working for an infrastructure engineering software company. And their name is Bentley Systems, headquartered in Exton, Pennsylvania, and they are a global force in the software industry, dealing mostly with civil engineering projects.
that's so cool.
Very cool. So like specifically coming into school, why did you choose to do focus on engineering cars, even though you were like a business student?
Yeah, so I transferred into Temple back in 2018. So coming from Delaware County, and I visited the Philadelphia Auto Show probably that year before coming into Temple. Noticed that this engineering project was going on, and actually two of the team members who I was first introduced when I got onto the team and who ended up becoming close friends, Christian Sloat and Angel Ortega, they were at the booth and they told me that it's not just an engineering project. There's a lot of business aspects of the team. And so when I got into Temple, that's exactly where I headed to. I met Chow Huynh, I met Ethan Musser, and I met Jonah Getz right off the bat. It was so funny walking into the room with the three of them, and they welcomed me with open arms, and I immediately started working. And yeah, it was a great time to get involved. And I was one of the few business people to get involved, and it was just a matter of expanding what I know how to do and working with everyone.
Could you go into a little bit about your history with the team? Like you mentioned you were in engineering. Could you mention kind of the transition and like why you wanted to go into TFR, why you wanted to go into the business team specifically on TFR?
Well, I think just the business aspect of an organization suits me best. I'm very I enjoy a personal aspect to everything. I do like to get hands on, and so that was always fun, and that allowed me to understand the role that everyone played. And so when I was able to see what everyone, all the parts that people were making, designing, it allowed me to better orient myself in a way to interface with our partners and our sponsors when I was on the team, and it allowed me to express the needs of our organization. So gaining a hands-on perspective allowed me to better do my job and interface with our partners.
So when you first joined, did you ever think you were going to be president?
No.
No.
No, not at all. I as I developed throughout the first year and really spending time in the machine shop and seeing what was Steven DeRoba, the president of the organization when I joined, was doing, and how the team was set up then. I didn't think that I would fall into that role. I think it was more of a technical oriented person who would lead the team. However, after seeing a full year of operation and going through the competition, it allowed me to kind of take a step back and see, okay, this worked and we got things done. It didn't work as efficiently or effectively as I think it could. And so then when it came time for identifying the successors to the previous team's leadership, I think I kind of fell into that position of being able to handle the scheduling, the interfacing
and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that led me into a good position.
Yeah, don't skip on details. Like, what were the steps? What were you doing before president?
What was like the first project you worked on, Hunter?
Yeah.
The first project I worked on?
Yeah.
Well, because I came into the room and Chow was in there, and Chow loves her carbon fiber. She wanted me to get carbon fiber, so I called up a number of companies and I did that. So getting not being afraid to get into some things that you're unsure about where you're going to, how this path will take you, of like calling a company, seeing what they're what they have to offer, what you can offer, and being able to present that. That was where how I kind of took charge and just kind of making small gains if it was something that someone needed, and just identifying what people on the team had needs of. So we all have a job to do and we all kind of know what job we need done. But within those jobs, there's a lot of unknowns, and being able to help that person find the solution is something that's always helpful. Because like Lil, who's heading up a big redesign, she's got so much going on with her MATLAB calculations and identifying what she needs. But throughout the whole design, if by the time she's ready with that and she doesn't have material that's necessary, and if Lil's the one probably doing all the calculations, she doesn't have enough time to contact a supplier and get that material. Being able to kind of piece those things together allows the team to work in the best way possible.
Could you dive into like, I think that was a great explanation. Could you dive into like what the business team does otherwhere, like at competition? What's the role of the business team there?
At competition, the main priorities of the business team are to present our organization. And one thing that is often forgotten is that, yeah, we do the cost report and but that's something that not only the business team is responsible for. Having everyone like working on that is the way that gets done, and everyone's not on the day of submission and submitting everything that is I tried to piece it all together, which often happens
the
night before. We did better. We did better this year, but or this past year, but it's a constant evolution. So doing the cost report and working with the engineering team so that they can also see exactly, do they have all their documents? Do they understand how it's going to be manufactured? That not only helps the engineering team throughout the whole course of the year, but when it comes to the cost report, having those people there who are capable of doing that. If you are getting in cost report, if you're getting audited, which a lot of the top teams do, you're able to explain your processes more thoroughly and earn points based on that. Second, in the business presentation, understanding how your organization is established, and being able to speak to how you've been able to present your product is will earn you top marks. And coming in with a creative approach always is something that they're looking for, because remember that these industry professionals who are judging you are looking for new and creative ideas, especially relating most often to the current state of the world, because they are looking for fresh talent who is trying to make a step forward into the automotive industry, and they want to be sure that you are a creative thinker. And that is
outside of the box thinking is like very important.
Exactly. And then back to where I was getting with this is during design presentation, it is not just an engineering design presentation. It is the design of how the project manager has set up this whole organization, how you guys function as a team, how you communicate effectively and get the job done in time. And that is a presentation in and of itself. So, and then if you've been hands-on, you can help dial in the toe and camber before the dynamic events.
Stop a fuel leak, right?
That's cool.
Yeah. Get some super glue on your fingers when you're trying to glue up some leaky coolant lines.
Or replace the whole engine during
Yeah.
That's happened before, of course.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. Risk mitigation, just going into competition and having spares of certain things. That's something that the business team can always be looking at. How do you prepare the team to tackle adverse conditions when they arise? And being able to keep everybody calm. That's also something
Keeping
too.
Morale is very important.
You always need positive morality.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then how do you feel, because you've obviously like gained a lot of skills, on TFR. How do you feel like TFR has led you to where you are today?
I think TFR has led myself and most of the people who have been on the team and are on the team now to be more confident. Confidence going out into the working world and your skills and your abilities. It's easy nowadays, especially with everything, all the information that's able to be consumed, and watching what other people are doing to get down on yourself and say, I don't have the skills, I don't have the capabilities. But then you look back on what you're really able to do and able to accomplish, and then go into that meeting or that interview or that conversation with someone and be able to speak to all the interesting experiences you've had, all the friendships you've made, and connections you've built. It's an experience that is uncommon, and so people love to hear it, especially those who are looking to hire new people.
So I was going to ask what else you enjoy doing outside of just cars and business and school and finding a job.
I've been getting into some fun stuff recently.
Oh no.
Oh, what does that mean?
That means I have recently started the process of getting my A license for skydiving. So I've been getting hucked out of airplanes for the past month now, and
That's so cool.
and
That
so
is
I've been.
such a you activity. I can't. I was like, wait a minute.
I was not expecting that answer.
No.
Yes, and it's wicked cool. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, and my dad was a pilot, and so and my great uncle, he was a balloonist, so he used to fly back in the 70s and just go up in air balloons. My dad used to fly around in planes, and I'm just jumping out of planes. And so it's my adrenaline thrill-seeking habit, and it's been exciting. It's been very exciting.
That's so
That
cool.
is crazy. How close are you to being done with it?
I just started. I've got four jumps in, and so it takes about 25 jumps to get your A license. So I'm well on my way, but it'll probably be come spring when it really comes full through.
Are you like
How
jumping
was
by
it?
yourself now? Or
Yeah,
is that later?
So you go through a 4-hour course, and then they teach you all the things that, like, say something, the chute doesn't open right, or you have to cut away and pull your emergency chute, and like what happens. Like they teach you all that, and then they throw you out of the plane by yourself.
Oh my
Oh
god.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's nuts. It's so much fun. And then they have a radio in your ear, and they tell you, like, do a 90-degree turn left, 90-degree turn right, and then once you get down to the ground, you gotta they teach you what you need to do.
Oh my gosh.
But you learn every time you get back to down to the ground, you learn you've learned already so much. So it's a process. That's been really fun.
How was it during COVID? Like doing that? Is it harder?
It's just everyone going through different safety procedures. When you're going up in the plane, you're all messed up. When you're around the other people, you're all messed up. So everyone's pretty cautious and safe, but not doing the tandem jumps is something that I don't think they're really doing, but it's a fun experience. It's so much fun.
Okay.
It's so
Anything
much fun.
else besides that, or just that?
Anything else besides that? What else have I been doing that? I changed the fluids in my car yesterday, and so that was fun. I got dirty. I got under the car, so that was happy. Yeah, pretty much that, and trying to find a job have been the two things on my list, and so now I'm on my way to both of those.
Yeah. You have a job and
Living the life.
you're going to be a skydiver.
True.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we asked this one to Chad because we know you've been to competition. What do you think the most important thing
Read
to
the
prepare
script.
for
Lil
this year?
really needs a script.
Even when I have a script, I
Nevada
can't
right
read it.
It's in magenta.
So slow.
Okay. What do you feel is the most important thing to prepare for this year for competition?
Since you guys are doing a lot of redesigns, making sure that the car is safe. I think having it be safe, and the best way to make sure that it's safe is obviously do your homework, and it's with the team that you guys have in place. You guys are very very diligent, so I think getting the homework done and getting practice, nothing is better than getting practice. And so if you guys can do your homework and make sure you have it well documented, design should be good, and then going out and testing and practicing is probably the next best thing to prepare for. So homework and then practice. Yeah.
Okay, if you could tell another future team a piece of advice, just in general, what would it be?
Well, Sybil took mine because she told me that the best piece of advice is that you know nothing. That is the best piece of advice.
It is the best.
You know nothing, and so there's always something to learn, and that you always learn from each other. But working together and for a future team, I guess the best thing is just being a collective organization and not having any sort of like blame culture, because this is a project that requires everyone's attention and detail, and making sure that everyone knows that the person next to them is working just as hard or trying to, and being able to work cohesively and not have any sort of like issues with each other makes a team function to the best results. So keeping each other in check in that way is probably the best thing, because if someone messed up something, at least they were trying, and as long as you're trying, there's really nothing wrong with being on a great team with everybody else.
Good advice.
That was nice.
It's always nice to come into a team where people are welcoming, and
yeah, and like everyone feels freely to like admit when they did something wrong and they need help. Like that's very important.
asking questions is the best thing you could possibly do. That's like when you come into something, you have nothing. So ask every question you possibly can, even if it might seem stupid.
Be annoying. Ask us questions all the time.
Being annoying is fun because it'll bring something up that person might have thought about. Mm-hmm. And if you see something wrong, tell something. Say something.
Mm-hmm. Say something. Even if you think it's wrong and you're not 100% sure it's wrong, say something.
Say something.
I have to ask.
Yeah. Because it could be someone's finger that gets lost. Not really.
Oh my god.
I mean. Okay, Chris, are you ready to ask the hardest question?
Okay, sure. Okay. You've seen the podcast, so you probably know what I'm gonna ask. But like, what are you looking forward to?
In my life, in the world, and
anything you want.
Anything you want.
Anything I want.
Open-ended.
Yeah.
Open-ended. This is a hard question. What am I looking forward to most?
Mm-hmm.
A new challenge. What I'm stepping into right now is going to be something more challenging than I've ever faced, and I think that's exciting. Being able to start back at base level and then work my way up through experience, through building relationships, and because you guys all know I'm such a people person. I love that. So I guess to that point, probably getting back to dancing, being able to be in a club with thousands of people around me. That's something that I always really enjoy.
You love talking to strangers too. Like you love talking to people.
If they're strange, I'm stranger. So I think tackling a new challenge is something that I'm really looking forward to. That I'm very thankful that I've been able to rely on my previous experience to get me here, and I've been able to leverage that to my benefit in such an unknown world. And I mean, even without COVID, it's when you leave university, it's almost like, where do I go? What are the possibilities? And really it's up to you to decide. And so I think just being able to confidently move forward is something exciting.
New chapter.
That was a really good answer, Hunter.
That's
awesome.
very good.
All right. Well, thank you.
I'm
for
coming
joining
out with
us.
great answers,
Yes,
but I
all
don't get
good.
to. I don't get to ask you guys all
You can
questions.
ask us something, sure. Why
Yeah,
not?
yeah.
Okay.
What do you have to ask us?
Who is your favorite team member this year? Just kidding. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So much trauma started.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm
Starting
kidding.
drama.
No. A question that I would love to ask you guys is, what is the biggest challenge since the senior members have left the organization that you guys have come across that you've had to work through?
Ashley Lowe.
I think for me, it's like being like, oh, like, where did this all come from? You know what I mean? So at least we had Elliot for wheel assembly to like, you know, because he did a bit, but like to be like, whoa, we're like, you know, new eyes looking at this stuff for like the first time, like these designs. So it's a lot of just being like, whoa, you know.
How have you been able to move into that and approach it with a different, like with the confidence that you have?
Yeah, it's just looking at like the purpose of everything, right? So why the pick-up points? Why were they this? You know, why did they choose the bearing from previous years? So it's just looking at their choices. Why did they apply this force for their like SolidWorks simulations? And just kind of like, in order to redesign, we have to go through their design to be like, okay, to build our design. So it's kind of just, you know, looking at their design piece by piece, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
It's like the struggle from the transfer of knowledge because it was such an abrupt like end. So it was hard to like move on and move like start redesigning.
It's not like we're like in the shop where like, you know, in between like classes, we can come in and like talk about design. It's like we're on Zoom and, you know, we meet on Zoom a couple times a week, but it's not the same as like being in the shop and like just talking to someone about, you know, whatever you want to talk about and kind of getting their input. It's like way different.
Yeah, so it feels like stuff is taking so much longer, but like we're doing very well with our like time management, but it feels like it's not going as fast.
Absolutely. Your guys' timeline is still very, very working very well, and you will get a car to competition.
Are we on par with last year?
You guys are a little bit behind as far as when you sent the chassis out.
Oh yeah.
But because you guys are having it welded out by VR3, you guys will be so much further ahead. Because you guys will have a chassis come in that's perfectly welded, and you won't have to, and then you can start assembling. Machining is going to be a challenge, but you guys will figure that out as you already are.
Yeah, slowly but surely. Hours and hours. Can't wait.
That's
Did you have any more questions, Hunter?
Yeah.
Who's your favorite alumni?
Okay, we're done.
No.
Just cut.
Great. All right. Thank you, Hunter, for joining us on the podcast. We wish the best of luck to you.
Thank you. Same to you guys.
Bye, Hunter.
Thanks for coming, Hunter. Hunter, it was great talking to you. We love hearing about all the cool things you've been up to since graduating. And we'd love to have you back whenever, especially when we get the car on the ground and driving. So feel free to stop by.
Of course. Thank you again, Hunter. And that's the end of this TFR podcast episode. Be sure to use the hashtag TFRPod, that's POD, to send us your questions or even DM your questions or stories from your FSAE team. You can follow Temple Formula Racing on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at Temple Formula Racing, and then at TU Formula Racing on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe, maybe comment down below. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you can rate the podcast, so feel free to give us a 5-star. If you're on Spotify, be sure to share it with any other platform you are listening on. So thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you next week. Next time.